Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell. Guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. And if you'd like to apply to be a co-author in one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Todds Belveal on the line, and he's founder of Washlava and Silvercar. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Man, this topic is killer today, Todd, that you came up with. So how to survive the first 90 days as a startup. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives listen to this for advice, and I feel like I know I'm going to learn a lot, even though we're still a startup. 5 years in, I say we're still a startup, but I'm excited to learn from you today. And just to get us kicked off, I'll start the show episode like we start them all, learning more about your mission. So, Todd, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Todd, what mission matters to you?
It's a good question, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to express it. I think I maybe came up with mine or arrived at mine over a period of time, a little less deliberately than you have, and probably less well expressed. But my background growing up, my mother was an educator. She spent her entire career, she passed this year, she spent her entire career educating other people's children. She was a single mother most of her life. So someone I looked up to in that regard, and always sort of embedded in me a desire for service to others, but from a professional standpoint, and I do some of that in mission-oriented work or service-oriented work in my personal life. I think probably not as much as I should. Who does, right? But then professionally, I started working, and I went to Vanderbilt, and then I went to NYU. Not right after one another, but I started my career with Tiffany and Company, which is a very clear mission that has for a long period of time as a retailer. And one of the best brands in the world. And so, they instilled a customer service, philosophy in my brain. I worked there every summer during school, and they hired me out of college, and they paid for my graduate degree as long as I did it in the evenings. So, I kind of learned from the best about consumer-oriented businesses. Really fell in love with that aspect, of consumer brands, I guess. I was too young to know, that it was you would make a career of it, or that would sort of be your professional major at the time. But I did it nonetheless, and I think it's informed everything since then. And, I had a career after that in management consulting, where we dealt with a lot of mission statements, which aren't as well done at the Fortune 500 level was the one that you just expressed for Mission Matters. But it informed how I approached consulting. It not always agreeing with my clients, but knowing that genuinely wanting to make an impact on their business and not make money, and simply not cut and paste previous work, but come up with really new and innovative things for them. It definitely, in terms of the startups, both my startups were born out of frustration, problems. I was perfectly happy in corporate America and following Accenture's mission and Alvarez and Marcel, the different firms I worked for. But in defining my own for those, began to realize that I really liked problematic consumer experiences. Rental car was one. And, the first startup addressed that. I rented more cars in my consulting travels than I would say anyone at Hertz, Davis, or Enterprise does in a year. And anyone at consulting really does, you may in your travels. I think solving that for other business travelers and myself, it became that business plan started off as a complaint letter to the big rental car company that I was loyal to at the time, and still am to a degree. But yes, so then the second one I think has become much more about Washlava is a laundry startup. It's aimed at upgrading laundromats, which serve 1 in 6 U.S. households in the United States, not necessarily all poor people, just structurally poor, but mainly young people, what I say, but a cross section of the United States. But there are 25,000 of them in the United States. And the laundry rooms on college campuses, they're just in a state that's just not up to standard, not in a position that they really should be in terms of cleanliness, environment, technology, appliances. So I'm really excited. That company is in its 7th year, so not too much older than yours. This is, but I think the impact we can have on that many people in the United States, and we've piloted overseas. We know we can have an impact overseas too by making it cashless, making it app only. Makes I think the opportunities for us to improve infrastructure where there are opportunities in sort of lesser developed areas, but also to provide better and upgrade experiences in more developed areas like New York City. Right? I mean, so. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about that. So, the rental car business is aimed at business travelers, so it's less altruistic, I guess, than I originally hoped it would be. I was hoping to deliver just a great product, kind of like Southwest Airlines does in air travel. Mm-hmm. Give the best car I could at a reasonable price, without all the bad fees and things we don't like to see on, and taxes we don't like to see on there. I did achieve that. In Washlava's case, there really are no competitors to worry about. There's no. It's just a coin-operated business that hogs all the quarters in the United States, that makes life difficult and unpleasant for something that people have to do every day. So, my goal is to leave a brand behind that can have a real social impact, on people of all income levels. But if I have more of a mission day to day, I would say that, sort of helping lower income people that were born there are still trying to elevate out of it. I think that's one of the best possibilities that Washlava has the promise of delivering that.
It's awesome. No, and it's a great story, and thank you for sharing your background and your mission. I love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and business owners on the line. So just going a little bit further into today's topic, and I think you gave us some nuggets already, but You've been in the startup space for a while. You've had some success. You were working on multiple businesses. What kind of advice would you give to those newbies that are out there, kind of just getting started in that, with their startup?
I think the best piece of advice I can give is a question I get a lot, and it's either from people who have either just gotten some funding somehow, and it may be not the right kind of funding, meaning friends and family. That's not the right kind of funding, in my opinion. Maybe necessary, but but if you're a founder or someone who has an idea that you simply can't get out of your head, which I think is typically who I meet or who approaches me with this question. They may be working like I was. They may be in a completely unrelated profession, but they have an idea for something. So there are really two pieces of advice that I give those people, and I'm typically at startup events, right? I'm not at other small business events or those sort of things. And then I think the first thing that people need to understand about any idea you have is it a startup or not? Meaning, there's a difference between startups and a small business. Startups aren't necessarily better than small businesses. They're just different. Small businesses become large. In fact, most of the large companies in the world started as small businesses, not startups. Startups are a recent phenomenon, but they're a philosophy of company building, a philosophy of investing that's designed to move fast, right? Designed to scale fast. So it has a different funding path. It has a different revenue growth path. You need to understand the difference. Which one is yours? If you have a great tasting cookie, that is not a startup. If you have software and you need millions to build it, you're a startup, right? Because it's easy to scale, right? It takes a while for people sometimes to understand that important dynamic, but it's important. And I think the other thing, the second piece of advice I give people is, I'm a big Atlanta Falcons fan and NFL fan in general. And most NFL teams, the first offensive drive of every game is scripted. There is no deviating from the script. If it doesn't work, the coach takes what they learned from the failure or the success of that script and applies it later in the game. Ideas comfort is found in structure, comfort, what I call more belief, right? You must believe in yourself. You must believe in your idea more than you believe in yourself, right? It has to be so powerful and so thoroughly researched. And I think that is the important part, research to the best of your ability so that you have enough structure around it, that you are confident presenting it to professional investors that know the funding path for startups, can help you arrive at that path. Because if they don't think you can arrive at that path, you're never going to get the funding you need to start anyway, and you'll never get the opportunity to quit your job. I never recommend that people bootstrap and quit their jobs. Do not quit your job without professional funding, unless you're wealthy, right, and can afford to do that by whatever means. I'm certainly not saying you have to sell stock in your company if you don't have to, but most do, even the wealthy founders. I say too, you have to build that belief. That belief leads to confidence. That belief leads to it, ideas, and do not suffer from the same insecurities that we do every day. When you work in corporate America and management consulting, you're getting paid at the end of the week or every 2 weeks, regardless of what kind of mood you're in, when you go to work. If you're unable to create, unable to confidently express, and unable to overcome fear or fear of fear, you won't get very far. I found that structure, at least for me, which is informed by research, makes your idea investable, gives you confidence, and ultimately leads to success, which is getting a seed round of funding.
It's awesome. I mean, it's great. It's great advice, and I was taking some notes there. Some of the big ones that you said is, don't bootstrap it. Like, get professional funding. Have things laid out. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, and what's interesting to me is that there's a lot of there's a lot of conflicting advice, different sides of things, different opinions. I mean, obviously we've all heard of the person that's bootstrapped or did this or that or all these other things, but you coming from management consulting and your view on startup versus business, I mean, it's quite refreshing. I hear very few people talk about the difference between those two things, and I feel like that nuance alone is very helpful for people to understand that to be an entrepreneur or to have your own business, there's just different ways to go about it. There's different structures, and those structures are laid out, and I won't say they're predictable as in you can always guarantee on being successful, but the mechanics of it, there's a lot of people that have been working and doing these types of things for a long time. There's a lot of good content out there, a lot of good advice, a lot of proven processes on how to increase the odds of you winning, right? Assuming the market takes to what you're doing. So all these things add up to, the probability of you having more success.
Yeah, and you get to an important point. I mean, probability is what you're fighting against. There's I haven't checked the recent studies, but when I would seed funding and keep in mind in Silvercar's case, I knew nothing. NYU let me graduate without even knowing what an operating agreement was. But that was then, that was 1997. Things have changed. You can learn that before you leave most institutions, particularly business schools, but even undergraduate institutions at this stage. But 1 in 1,200 are roughly your chances of getting a seed round for a startup. So it better be a startup. There's a reason, but small businesses are also very good too. The Small Business Administration will loan you $5 million at 3% for a great small business. They won't loan me $1.
Yeah.
Startups are bad credit for the Small Business Administration. So again, it's a question of value. It's a question of, you can still grow very quickly. It's just, again, how do you start? And does the startup philosophy, call it, born in Silicon Valley and other places, does that philosophy apply to your concept, or does it not? Right. The same thing is true of products. You don't fund products, with startup money. People ask me, when are you going to Shark Tank? Shark Tank can't invest in my company. And if I did it, it'd be a disaster. I'd never get another dollar. So again, if you're facing long odds, the best way, you're an underdog going in. The other side's heavily favored. The best way to go in is to structure your concept well, research it thoroughly so that you're feeling confident, that you understand it, that the thoughts in your head, you're at least taking action on it. You'll get to an inflection point where, like you and I both did, where you realize you simply have to do something about it, right? And you're going to say, and most people say, I'm going to give myself this amount of time to do something about it. That's what funding does from professional investors. They say, you better spend my money in 6 months. Bootstrapping people, I've heard the heroic stories, and they are true, but they're rare. If you really look at the research, it's rare. They tend to drift. They have no accountability to others, only to themselves. Entrepreneurship is lonely enough. Without someone sort of, spanking you on the butt and saying, get moving, so you're not moving fast enough so you can hit the VC selling season, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's why I need my equity secure. So get moving, start spending my money. You're not spending it fast enough. The ones I work with, I say, you're the buyer, you're not spending money. What are you doing? You should be spending money. I don't care what you're spending it on, but at the end of the day, you better be able to comfortably get this amount of money. Because that's what I think you need moving forward. So it's about action and whatever you need to stimulate that. And any of those processes or methodologies, I agree. There's a lot of noise. I tend to be a bit contrarian and I guess practical about these things, because unfortunately my startups have never been just software, where I think it's a little more complicated. I've always picked industries no one else wants to touch. So I'm kind of lucky in that respect. But yeah, that's kind of why I always reinforce that. Just research will either convince you that your idea is not good enough, or convince you that it is, and lead you to act on it.
So Todd, first off, this has been great, and I mean, there's just so much more here to unpack. But we're about out of time for this episode. If somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Washlava or Silvercar, just follow your work in general and what you're doing and the content you're putting out. I mean, how do people connect?
I think the best way now is, despite my general predilection against self-promotion, I have a website. ToddBelveal.com. You can go there if you want to reach out, ask questions, learn about the other ventures. I'm happy to share not just anything you'd like to learn about those two experiences and what I've learned from other founders. Or if you want me to talk to any other people or invest in something, I'm always open to listen and easy to contact directly.
That's awesome. Well, Todd, again, pleasure having you on the show today. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing more about your work and leaving those words of wisdom. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We definitely want you to be a return listener and a return visitor. And Todd, again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.